We are now talking to creator of the Rookie Big Board, Matt Hicks. What's going on, Matt?
Hey, fellas. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. You know, Matt, with everything that's going on in not only the NFL, we have the playoffs right under our feet. I guess under our toenails. Speedy, do you shave your toes?
No.
You don't shave your toes? So you got hairy toes?
In the middle, sure.
Oh my God! Did you hear that, Matt? He doesn't shave his toes. This is not good, man. I mean, if you're looking to get a woman, make sure you shave your toes because they do not like hairy toes.
Matt, I'm sorry you had to endure comments about potential foot fungus.
But Matt, college football is now over. Georgia Bulldogs are the national champions right now. What were your thoughts before we get into a little college, players going into the NFL and your thoughts of the draft? What were your thoughts of the Georgia Bulldogs knocking off the Alabama Crimson Tide?
Oh, man, I absolutely love it. It was a great game, first and foremost, in the college football playoff era. Sometimes we've gotten good games, sometimes we haven't, but it was a good game through and through. I will say, I'm an SEC guy, and so seeing Alabama lose is always a good thing for me. When Alabama loses, we all win. So that was a great one. And listen, here's the bottom line. This was the year to knock off Alabama because they're going to come back. They're going to look even better next year. So I'm glad Georgia got it done. Those fans have been waiting 40-plus years. So they earned it. They put in the investment into that program. They put in a lot of money, a lot of patience. They've been recruiting like crazy. So they built up the roster. They did the right way. They deserve that win, and let's enjoy it while we can because it's probably going to be the Crimson Tide back on top next year.
Well, I mean, with a coach named Kirby, I mean, I've never heard a crazier name as a coach. Actually, I have, but I mean, with all the different crazy names that are right now in college football, I mean, Alabama has Kool-Aid. Okay, I mean, there are so many crazy names. We're going to be seeing this in the NFL for many, many years to come. So it's very, very funny. So why don't we get into some of these potential draft stock players that are going into the draft this year, and your thoughts. So obviously we're here in New York, so I want to know your thoughts with the Jets and the Giants. The Jets are drafting at 4 and 10 in this year's draft. They got Seattle's pick at number 10, and the Giants I think have
5 and 7.
5 and 7, which they have the Chicago Bears draft pick because they traded down and obviously getting who they got, Justin Fields. What are your thoughts? What the Jets should do at 4 and 10, and the Giants doing at 5 and 7?
Yeah, I mean, I will tell you, I am a Giants fan as well. It's a tough life. So, man, what do I want them to do? I want them to overhaul the entire offense. I mean, it seems like it's just a mismatch together. I mean, you have to look at the top of the class. You see the opportunity in the trenches, right? So that's got to jump out to you. A guy like Evan Neal's got to be towards the top. Just kind of looking at it, looking at that tackle position, we still don't have it shored up yet. I mean, it's going to be tough with the Giants. I'm ready to move on from Daniel Jones. I don't know if they will be yet, just because of the strength of this quarterback class. I don't know if they're going to want to pull the trigger at 5 or 7. You could see them potentially maybe in day 2 looking at that quarterback position. So it's going to be tough for the Giants, but I feel like it's got to be along the offense, right? I mean, the defense is in a pretty solid place right now. But I think one of the other things we're going to have to pay attention to with the Giants is they're going to be cutting cap space like crazy, right? So there could be some guys not on this roster that you might be surprised by just because they need to free up space. So sometimes the draft ends up just plugging in those spots instead of really developing your roster.
So is there a positional priority for the Giants, especially with number 5? Because it seems like this draft, there's a lot of the pass rushers on top, and then Stingley and Neal are the other quote-unquote elite prospects. So what do you want to do with that pick in terms of position priority? And at picks number 7, would you consider potentially trading back? Because the Giants do have a lot of hole in this roster. Or is there a prospect that you would have in mind kind of in that top 10 area?
Yeah, I mean, I think best practice is trading back, right? Especially when you are a roster that needs so much help. And I don't think any GM is coming into the Giants and expecting them to compete next year, right? So it's going to be a little bit of a rebuild here, and you have to think a new GM is going to want to get the most out of it. I could see the Giants, and again, this is going to change wildly, right? The new GM is going to come in, have his own approach to drafting, but I could see them reaching up for one of these wide receivers to really try to make a splash in the offense. I could see a guy like Treylon Burks coming to the combine. He's super athletic. He's a big body guy. I could see him coming to the combine and leaving as a top 10 pick. And when you're the Giants and you have those 2 picks in the top 5, if you feel like offensive tackle is a priority, go ahead, draft your offensive tackle. And it's almost, I don't want to call it a luxury pick, right? But you feel a little bit more freedom maybe to take one of these skill position guys. And I think if they walked away with Evan Neal and Treylon Burks with 2 of the top 10 picks, you'd be really excited about that. Now, the question is, can they actually utilize these weapons? Or are they just going to keep spending draft capital on them? But I think that would be it. The other option is quarterback, like I mentioned, but I'm just not sure they're going to want to go there. I could see them falling in love with a guy like Kenny Pickett. He kind of fits that Giants mold, but again, that new front office might sway that direction.
As you guys know, we are talking to creator of Rookie Big Board, Matt Hicks. Matt, they've been talking about this draft class being a big pass rushing draft class. Obviously, on the top of the board, you have Kevon Thibodeau and Aiden Hutchinson. Some people are saying Aiden's going to go number 1. Now there are stories that being that the Jaguars are drafting at 1, they want to protect their quarterback. So Neal's sitting there. Wouldn't be stupid. It wouldn't be that far-fetched that that's where they're going to go. What are your thoughts of this year's draft crop when it comes to pass rushers?
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms, it's an interesting draft class because the last couple of years, right, it's been quarterback at the top, and you knew that, and you were just waiting for some of these other guys to come off the board. When you look at a guy like Aiden Hutchinson, he was somebody who I know my coworkers there at NFL Draft Bible were ready to put Aiden Hutchinson at the top of last year's class before he suffered that injury. He comes back, has a super productive year. And I think for a lot of folks, it's Aiden Hutchinson right now as the top edge guy over Kayvon Thibodeau. But with Thibodeau, it's a little bit more of an athletic player, a little bit more raw. Might be able to have a little bit higher of a ceiling with him. And we know, right, production, you don't necessarily need that production at the college level to be an effective NFL player. So I'd say, at the top, those are the 2 big guys. David Ajabo is somebody who I think when you start working a tier down is still going to be in that first-round conversation. And then I think once you get past those first 3 edge players, it starts to open up George Karlaftis as well. So those top 4 guys,
we all
starts
love
to
George.
open up a little bit.
We all love George.
And Jermaine Johnson is a guy who's getting a lot of buzz right now out of Florida State as well. Super productive final year. Transferred out of Georgia, was originally a Bulldog. And so we could be looking at 5 edge guys in the first round. It's a pretty good class. But I think it will be the discourse you're going to hear over the next 4 months is going to be Thibodeau versus Hutchinson.
So being that it's not really a big quarterback draft class this year, do you see it a case where teams are not going to be as aggressive to trade up, kind of like you saw in 2020 with the pandemic year where they didn't have the combine? Or do you still think because it's a lot of pass rushers, a lot of offensive linemen, line of scrimmage positions, you got to win in the trenches, you'll still see teams trying to trade up?
I think quarterbacks are what people really jump up for. I think what we might not see as much of is those mid-round jump ups, right? But I think there's going to be some quarterbacks that slide a little bit further down the board, right? If you are a team kind of in that 15 to 25 range, and a guy like Sam Howell is still on the board, right? Somebody who at one point in time was projected as a top 5 NFL draft pick. It looks like his stock is sliding. I could easily see one of those borderline playoff teams wanting to go ahead and go after a guy like Sam Howell, right? So I could see them trading up there. The other spot that I always look for trade-ups, right, is the end of the first round. There's always teams looking to get in on pick 30, 31, 32, right, because you get the 5th year. You get that extra year on that rookie deal. And so you could be looking at a situation, think back all the way to the Ravens with Lamar Jackson, right? They end up trading back into the first round in that Jackson year because they want to get the quarterback on the rookie deal. So if there's a guy who has a lot of upside, a Malik Willis, even if you want to go down the Desmond Ridder route, right? And you're an NFL team that is just going to be looking to develop a quarterback, you might be willing to trade up from, say, early to mid-second round to get that extra year on the rookie contract, because we know there's nothing more valuable in the NFL, right, than a rookie quarterback on a cheap contract.
Matt, there are multiple teams that have multiple first-round draft picks this year. It's crazy. You talk about the Giants. We mentioned the Jets. I'm a Jet fan. You have, obviously, Philadelphia, the Detroit Lions. I think the Jaguars, too, I think, have that. I mean, if I'm not mistaken. So you look at right now where all these teams are sitting, and a lot of people are saying because this draft isn't so top heavy, you could get a gem in the middle of this first round that could probably be the best player in this draft. Do you see any of these teams possibly passing up on a player and drafting down and trying to add more draft pick or more draft stock right now moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the NFL draft, right, it's a numbers game at the end of the day. If you are a Philadelphia fan, right, you got 3 picks in that first round. They're 15, 16, and 19 right now.
Wow.
You probably feel better about those 3 picks than Denver sitting there at 9, right? Because you're going to hit. If you draft 3 guys in the first round, you're going to hit on 1 or 2 of those guys. You can whiff on a first rounder. NFL teams do it all the time, right? And so if you are a team kind of sitting in that mid-range round or mid-round range, I think trading back is something that makes a lot of sense. When you look at the NFL draft every year, and I don't have a good grasp on what this number is yet, but a lot of folks, they look at the first round and they say there's 32 picks, so there's 32 first-round talents in an NFL draft. It's not usually the way it works. Usually there kind of gets consensus as we go through the combine, Senior Bowl week, as we go through all the interviews. Teams kind of come to a consensus, and most NFL teams, when they build out their draft boards, they have usually somewhere between 14 and 20, 22 guys that they consider first-round talents, right? So if you're a team drafting there, right, say you're the Saints at 18, if you get to 18 and all of the players that you consider to be first-round picks are off the board, you're going to trade back, right? Because for you could get a player at a similar talent level in the second round, and maybe you pick up a 4th-round pick too. And at the end of the day, with the NFL draft, you want to give yourself as many shots to hit because there's no perfect prospect, right? Nobody's surefire. Nobody's 100%. And so you look at a team like the Patriots are known for doing that because they tend to have a little bit less confidence in the number of first-round talent guys they have. And they don't care if they're picking 25 or 52 if that player is considered a second-round value for them.
So, but before we continue with the draft, you mentioned you're an SEC fan. Who's your team, just out of curiosity?
Yeah, I'm a Tennessee alum. It's a tough life.
Yeah, that is tough. That is tough. So I wanted to ask about the SEC prospects. You watch a lot of SEC football. A lot of these SEC prospects that are in this draft. Is there any sleepers that we should know about? A lot of people know obviously about some of the Alabama and Georgia guys, and somebody like Burks, like you mentioned. Do you think there's any sleepers that we should know about throughout the SEC?
Thinking about sleepers coming out of the SEC specifically, one guy who's kind of a little bit under the radar right now, and he popped a little bit at the Sugar Bowl. I'm glad folks got to see it. You look at Dontario Drummond out of Ole Miss. He's got a nice frame to him. I want to pull up his exact measurements, make sure I don't get it wrong here. He's coming in around, I believe it's 6'2", 210. He's a super athletic guy. He took handoffs behind the line of scrimmage. He does a lot with the ball in his hands after the catch. Great yards after catch potential there. And he's kind of faded away a little bit because the Ole Miss offense has so many playmakers that he doesn't, if you're just Googling highlights of Ole Miss, he's not necessarily going to pop as much. But somebody who I think could sneak into the top 100, maybe early day 3, and just be, plug and play piece right there in an NFL offense. So he's somebody that I definitely have my eye on. And then, another guy that I think is starting to get a little bit of love here, but it took a little while. Brian Robinson out of Alabama is somebody that I've had my eye on for a while.
I like
know
him
folks
too.
have kind of caught on to him now that we got into the playoff. But this dude is yoked up. I mean, he is a huge dude, and his athletic testing is going to be ridiculous. Once he hits the combine, puts up those numbers with that weight, he's going to be a top 100 pick, locked and loaded. And he might not be somebody who's the running back 1 in an NFL offense year 1, but by year 2 or 3, I think he's going to be looking at 175, 200 touches. So,
Derrick Henry.
Those are two guys that I think are
Henry
still a little bit too low.
Like a Derrick Henry kind of type of player, right? Because Derrick Henry.
He's built very similarly. I mean, nobody's built like Derrick Henry, but he's probably about as close as you can get, right?
Yes. Well, Derrick Henry didn't really start and really get his opportunity until his second at mid-year. It was like the second mid-year when he finally got an opportunity. And then all of a sudden, Vrabel said, you know what, I'm keeping this beast in, and I'll let him run and trample all over people.
DeMarco Murray's played so well, he didn't get to start right away.
No.
And then he got hurt. Derrick Henry took the job.
And he didn't lose it.
And he didn't lose it.
No, he took over. And he's been more of a second half type of running back. But this year, that man's just a beast. And if anybody doesn't believe, he's in the last 2 years, besides the quarterbacks, he's been the all-around best player in the league. He's been fantastic. And Derrick Henry should, if he didn't hurt himself this year, he'd probably be an MVP candidate like we talk about Cooper Kupp and obviously Taylor and obviously Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady.